there's a particular kind of person a narcissist cannot survive encountering. Not because this person fights back, not because they expose the narcissist publicly, not because they seek revenge, but because they do something the narcissist's entire psychological structure cannot process. They become genuinely indifferent. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote about a concept he called ressentiment, the poison of powerless hatred, the kind that festers because you can't act on it. The narcissist feeds on this. Your anger nourishes them. Your pain validates them. Your need to make them understand gives them the only thing they actually want, your attention. Carl Jung understood this from a different angle. He said that what you resist persists, that the shadow you refuse to integrate controls you from the unconscious. The narcissist is a walking, unintegrated shadow, and the moment you integrate yours, the moment you stop playing the game they designed, something in them collapses. This isn't about being cruel. This is about understanding what Nietzsche and Jung both knew, that the greatest power you have over someone who needs your reaction is to genuinely stop caring about giving them one, not performing indifference, actually becoming it. Let me show you how this destroys them without you lifting a finger. First, you need to understand what you're dealing with, not the surface-level narcissism everyone talks about, the philosophical and psychological architecture that makes a narcissist function. Because once you see the structure, you see exactly where it's vulnerable. Nietzsche identified two fundamental types of morality in human psychology. He called them master morality and slave morality. Master morality says I am good, therefore what is different from me is bad. It's affirmative. It defines itself positively. Slave morality works backwards. It says they are evil, therefore I am good by opposition. It's reactive. It needs an enemy to exist. The narcissist operates entirely through slave morality. Their entire identity is constructed by opposition. They're not good because of who they are. They're good because you're bad. They're not successful because of their accomplishments. They're successful because you're a failure. They're not valuable because of inherent worth. They're valuable because you're worthless. This is why they need you, not you specifically, but someone to play the role of inferior. Without that contrast, they have no definition, no identity, no sense of self. Nietzsche wrote in Beyond Good and Evil that the slave revolt in morality begins when ressentiment itself becomes creative and gives birth to values. The narcissist's entire value system is born from resentment, from the need to be superior by making you inferior. Here's what that means practically. When you engage with their accusations, their provocations, their attempts to make you defend yourself, you're confirming the framework. You're accepting the role of the bad one so they can be the good one. You're playing the game. And in that game, they always win. Not because they're right, because the game itself is rigged. Now add Jung's perspective. Jung said that everyone has a shadow, the parts of ourselves we can't accept, the qualities we reject, suppress, deny. Healthy people integrate their shadow. They acknowledge it. They work with it. They become whole by accepting all of themselves, light and dark. The narcissist cannot do this. Their shadow, their sense of inadequacy, their shame, their fear, is too overwhelming. So instead of integrating it, they project it onto you, onto everyone around them. Every weakness they can't face in themselves becomes an accusation against you. If they feel inadequate, you're incompetent. If they feel worthless, you're the one with no value. If they feel ashamed, you're the shameful one. It's not conscious. It's a psychological mechanism running automatically. And it only works if you accept the projection, if you take it in, if you believe it or fight against it. Jung wrote that the shadow is the person you'd rather not be, For the narcissist, that shadow is everything. Their entire self-image is a thin shell covering an abyss of unintegrated shame, and they need you to carry that shame for them. When you refuse, when you hand it back through indifference, they're forced to confront what they've spent their entire life running from, themselves. So how do you actually do this? How do you move from understanding the theory to embodying the practice? Let me give you 5 specific approaches. Not tactics, not manipulation. Philosophical and psychological transformations that make you immune to narcissistic control. First approach, amor fati, Nietzsche's concept of love of fate. This isn't just accepting what happened, it's loving what happened, wanting it exactly as it was, including the narcissist, including the pain, including everything. This sounds impossible when you're still in pain, when you're still angry, when you still want them to admit what they did, to apologize, to suffer. But here's what Nietzsche understood. As long as you wish the past were different, you're chained to it. As long as you need something from the narcissist, acknowledgement or justice, or even just understanding, they have power over you. Amor fati means looking at the entire experience and saying, I wouldn't change this. Not because it wasn't painful, because it taught me something I needed to learn. It showed me something about myself, about relationships, about boundaries I didn't know I needed. The person I am now needed that experience to exist. So I'm grateful, not to the narcissist, to fate, to life, to whatever force brought that experience into my path. When you reach this state, and it's a state, not a performance, the narcissist loses all power. They need you to hate them. Hatred keeps you connected, keeps you thinking about them, keeps them significant in your life. When you genuinely feel gratitude for the lesson and indifference to the teacher, they become irrelevant, not through effort, through transformation. How do you get there? You don't skip the anger, you feel it completely. You don't bypass the grief, you sit with it. You don't pretend the pain wasn't real. You acknowledge it fully. And then you extract meaning. You ask, what did this teach me? What boundary did I not have that I have now? What part of myself did I abandon that I've reclaimed? What strength did I discover I didn't know I had? You mine the experience for every possible insight until there's nothing left but learning. And when learning is all that remains, amor fati becomes natural. You wouldn't wish it away because then you'd wish away who you've become. And who you've become is someone the narcissist can no longer touch. Second approach, shadow integration, Jung's core work. The narcissist attacked you with projections. They called you selfish, weak, damaged, unlovable, whatever specific accusations they used. Those accusations had power because somewhere, some part of you feared they might be true. That fear is your shadow. The part of yourself you haven't fully accepted. Shadow work means turning toward those accusations instead of away from them. Asking, is there truth here? Not their exaggerated, weaponized version, but some kernel of actual truth. Maybe you are selfish sometimes. Maybe you do have weaknesses. Maybe you are damaged by your history. So what? Who isn't? The moment you accept these things about yourself without judgment, the accusations lose all power. You can't shame someone for something they've already accepted about themselves. The narcissist's projections bounce off integrated shadow. They don't stick. They don't wound. They just reveal that the narcissist is still at war with parts of themselves you've made peace with. This is where it gets profound. When your shadow is integrated and the narcissist projects onto you, the projection doesn't land on you. It reflects back to them. They see their own shadow. And because they're not integrated, because they can't tolerate seeing it, they have to retreat. They have to find a different target. someone whose shadow is still available for them to exploit. Practically, this means doing the uncomfortable work, sitting with the accusation that hurt the most, asking why it hurt. What fear does it touch? What part of myself am I rejecting that this accusation activates? And then accepting that part, not fixing it, not defending it, just acknowledging it as part of being human. When you've done this work, when you know yourself, including the parts that aren't perfect, the narcissist becomes powerless. They're fighting with projections. You're living in reality. Reality always wins. Third approach, Nietzsche's will to power turned inward. Nietzsche said that all human behavior is an expression of will to power, the drive to exert force, to have impact, to matter. But there are two directions this can go: power over others or power over yourself. The narcissist chose power over others. They need to control how you see them, how you feel, what you do. Their entire sense of agency comes from making you react. When you're angry, they have power. When you're hurt, they have power. When you're trying to make them understand, they have power. Your emotional state is their scoreboard. You have a different option: power over yourself. This means redirecting all the energy you've been spending on the narcissist, trying to change them, trying to get through to them, trying to make them see, and instead spending it on becoming who you want to be. Not who they said you couldn't be, not who you need to be to prove them wrong. Who you actually want to be independent of them entirely. What skill have you wanted to develop? Develop it. What physical goal have you had? Pursue it. What creative project have you abandoned? Return to it. Build a life so compelling that the narcissist becomes a footnote. This isn't about showing them. It's not about making them jealous or regretful. It's about genuine self-creation. Nietzsche wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra that he who cannot obey himself will be commanded. The narcissist commanded you because you weren't commanding yourself. You were waiting for external validation to act, waiting for permission to want what you want, waiting for someone to tell you that you are worthy of effort. Stop waiting. Command yourself. Decide what you're building and build it. Decide who you're becoming and become it. The narcissist loses all relevance when you're absorbed in creation. Not because you're avoiding them, because you're genuinely busy building something more interesting than they could ever be. Fourth approach, non-reaction as non-existence. This combines Nietzsche and Jung in a specific way. Nietzsche said, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." Jung said, "What you resist persists." The synthesis is this: what you don't feed dies. The narcissist sends a provocation, an insult, a manipulation, a triangulation. They're expecting a specific reaction: anger, defense, pleading, explanation. That reaction is the food. It confirms they still have impact, that they still matter, that you're still in the game. When you give no reaction, not a suppressed reaction but genuine non-reaction, something breaks in the system. They threw out bait and nothing bit. They pushed a button and nothing happened. From their perspective, it's like you've ceased to exist as a person they can affect. And if you don't exist as someone they can affect, they don't exist as someone with power. Their identity collapses. This doesn't mean being rude or cold in a performative way. That's still a reaction. It means actual indifference. They insult you. You feel nothing. Or you feel something briefly, and it passes like weather. You respond if necessary with neutral information. Or you don't respond at all because there's nothing that needs responding to. The key is that this isn't a strategy. It's a state. You're not trying to hurt them by not reacting. You genuinely don't care enough to react. That's the difference between tactic and transformation. A tactic can be detected and countered. A transformation is simply who you are now. And who you are now is someone who finds the narcissist uninteresting. Jung wrote that what you resist persists. The inverse is true. What you don't resist, what you don't engage with, what you don't give energy to, fades. The narcissist persists in your life as long as you're resisting them, fighting them, trying to make them different. The moment you stop all of that, they have nothing to push against. They dissolve. Fifth approach, the eternal return as ultimate test. This is Nietzsche's most intense thought experiment. He asks you to imagine that a demon comes to you and says, "You will live this exact life, every moment, every experience, infinite times. Nothing changes. It repeats forever." Would you curse the demon or thank them? Most people would curse, because they're carrying resentment, regret, wishes that things had been different. As long as you're carrying that about the narcissist, they own part of your past, and therefore part of your present and your future. Nietzsche's answer is that the highest human being would say yes, would embrace even the suffering, would want it again because it created who they are. This is amor fati taken to its ultimate conclusion. You don't just accept the narcissist was in your life. You choose it again because it was necessary. This is the final destruction of the narcissist's power. They expect to haunt you, to be the villain in your story forever, the source of your damage, the reason you can't trust or love or be happy, when instead you integrate the experience so completely that you'd willingly experience it infinite times because it contributed to who you became. They lose even the power to be your trauma. They become a chapter, not even a long one. A chapter that had to be there for the story to make sense, but not the story itself, not the defining moment, just one experience among many that shaped you. Getting here requires extracting every possible lesson, understanding exactly what the relationship revealed about your boundaries, your patterns, your unhealed wounds, doing the work to heal those wounds, setting those boundaries, breaking those patterns, and then being able to look back and say, honestly, I needed that to happen to become this. I wouldn't undo it. When you reach that point, and you'll know when you have because there will be no charge, no emotional activation when you think of them, you've transcended. And transcendence is the ultimate indifference, not hostile, not cold, just beyond. Now let me show you how these 5 approaches create a specific type of person. Nietzsche called this person the Übermensch, the one who goes beyond conventional morality, beyond the need for external validation, beyond resentment and revenge, and the entire framework the narcissist operates within. The Übermensch doesn't play the narcissist's game because they're not even on the same board. The narcissist is playing for approval, for dominance, for supply. The Übermensch is creating their own values, living by their own standards, becoming their own ideal. Here's what that looks like practically. The narcissist tries to make you feel guilty. Guilt requires accepting their moral framework. You don't. You have your own values and you live by them. Their judgment is irrelevant. The narcissist tries to make you jealous through triangulation. Jealousy requires wanting what they have access to. You don't want it. You're building something they can't even comprehend. The narcissist tries to make you angry by violating boundaries. You're not angry. You simply enforce consequences. They're not allowed in your life anymore. Not as punishment, as natural result. You don't punish the rain for falling. You just stay inside. Same energy. This is what Nietzsche meant by going beyond good and evil. Not that you have no ethics, but that you don't need the narcissist to be evil for you to be good. You're not defining yourself in opposition to them. You're defining yourself through creation, through active choice, through becoming. The narcissist needs you to see them as either savior or demon. Übermensch sees them as human, damaged human operating from unhealed wounds, deserving of compassion perhaps, but not deserving of access. Compassion from a distance, understanding without engagement, seeing clearly without needing to fix. Jung's version of this is individuation, becoming who you truly are, not who your parents wanted, not who society expects, not who the narcissist said you couldn't be, who you actually are underneath all the conditioning and trauma and performance. The narcissist never individuates. They're stuck in persona, the mask, the false self. There's nothing underneath. That's why they need your reactions. Your reactions make them feel real. Without them, they're confronted with the void where a self should be. When you individuate, when you connect with your actual self, you become incomprehensible to the narcissist. They're looking for the hooks, the insecurities, the needs, and there aren't any they can access. Not because you're perfect, because you've accepted your imperfections. You're whole in a way they never can be while they're running from their shadow. This is the ultimate destruction without effort. You don't attack them. You don't expose them. You don't seek revenge. You simply become someone they can no longer manipulate. Someone who has integrated what they project. Someone who has created meaning from what they meant as pain. Someone who has transcended the entire framework they operate within. And from that place, they simply don't matter. Not in a hostile way. In the way that someone you used to know doesn't matter. They were relevant once. They taught you something. You've moved on. The end. Here's what I need you to understand. This isn't easy. Nietzsche and Jung didn't promise easy. They promised true. Amor fati takes time. Shadow integration takes courage. Will to power over self takes discipline. Non-reaction takes genuine transformation. Eternal return takes complete reconciliation. But the alternative is staying in the game. Continuing to let the narcissist live rent-free in your head. Continuing to give them power through your hatred, or your need for justice, or your fantasy that they'll one day understand what they did. They won't. And waiting for them to is giving them your life. You have a choice. Continue playing their game where they always win because they made the rules, or step off the board entirely, not through avoidance, through evolution, through becoming someone who exists in a dimension they can't access. Nietzsche asked, "Would you live this life again infinite times?" Jung asked, "Have you become who you truly are?" When the answer to both is yes, the narcissist ceases to exist in your universe, not because you banish them, because you outgrew the level of consciousness where they have meaning. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, said something that ties this together. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury, not to hurt them back, not to expose them, not to win, to become so fundamentally different from them that comparison becomes impossible. That's what destroys them. Not your anger, your indifference, not your attack, your absence, not your need for them to suffer, your complete disinterest in whether they do or don't. You've moved on to building something real while they're still playing the same game with new victims. And deep down, on some level, they may never consciously access. They know. They know you escaped. They know you're free. They know they lost the only power they actually had, your attention. And there is nothing they can do to get it back. That's the destruction. Silent, complete, irreversible, and achieved through nothing but becoming who you actually are. Drop a comment. When did you realize that indifference was more powerful than hate? I read every one.